Hi, everybody. This is Manisha. I head the coaching for Shinomics, and today I'm here with Divya. We'll be talking about courage and compassion. As coaches, we are used to conversations. We think in conversations, and hence we thought we'll come up with a light-hearted series of conversations around themes that we see in our work in the area of leadership development. And every month we'll have a theme. The theme for this month is courage and compassion. And so Divya and I will be navigating through our journey, sharing what we've seen while building courage and compassion for ourselves and answering a few questions that came up for us when we had announced this topic. Um, and so, yes, Divya, over to you.
Thank you, Manisha. Hi, everyone. My name is Divya Martyn. I'm the head of client and community engagement at Shinomics. And this topic is something that, we have thought a lot about at Shinomics as well, because as women ourselves in our own career journeys, there has been a lot of impact that courage and compassion has made. So I'll share a small way that, or actually not very small, a significant way courage has I've tried to inculcate courage in my life is when I started off my career journey, I wasn't very vocal about, what I wanted with my career or the kind of support that I'd need. Or even when giving feedback to anyone, I wasn't very vocal. And then as I kept, getting more experience, I realized I need to start having these courageous conversations, right? Whether it was with my manager or with my peer, I needed to start talking about things that really affect me. So I started. And then I realized, wait a minute, I think I might be going a bit overboard with this. Because in my head, I was being courageous and voicing an opinion or voicing a thought that I had. But I realized I wasn't being very careful about the words I was using when voicing these opinions and thoughts. And they came across as or I wasn't being mindful of how the impact was made on the other person, right? And I wasn't being compassionate in that sense to the other person because I wasn't careful about the words I chose. And when that realization hit, that was when I realized, while for me it was an act of courage, of speaking up, of sharing my thoughts, there are always, unless there is an element of compassion in the way you speak for yourself and for the other person that you're speaking with, your intention just gets lost, right? Why, whatever reason you wanted to share a thought or an idea or an opinion just gets lost in this whole then the dilemma that arises afterwards. And for me, that was a very interesting realization for myself. And that's when I started understanding that, compassion plays such a huge role, especially when you want to be courageous. And compassion towards others as well as yourself, right? So I'm on this journey. I'm still not perfect, but it's a very interesting journey because I get to learn and get to, really reflect on a lot of things that impact the way I portray courage in my life. And Manisha, what about you? How has courage and compassion played out for you in your life?
So yeah, it's been a journey, and I think if I have to recollect, I can think of it at two levels. I think one was in establishing a relationship with myself. So initially, when I started noticing what my relationship with courage was, I could see myself protecting me from steps that I wanted to take, which I thought would take me closer to my growth, but would also did also have a probability of putting me in a vulnerable position. So let's say I decided to do something which was slightly out of my comfort zone or something which was ambitious. I would want to protect myself also, that it's okay. Don't try it. You need to do it right now. And I think in the process, of course, I realized I wasn't learning much. And so there came a tipping point where it became evident to me that I need to work something out so that I can be courageous. And initially, there was a tendency to look out for people who would encourage me, say, go do it. But I think once I started working and I was traveling a lot, it wasn't always possible for me to have a friend by my side, or someone to say those words. And hence I realized I had to be that person for myself. And that's when I think my compassionate self woke up, where I was like, okay, at best what will happen, I won't do um, as well as I want to, but what does that mean? What does that mean? And the most empowering meaning that I found was that, okay, if the result isn't that stellar, I will learn something. And I think that was very significant for me, because as soon as I would process something this way, whenever the result was not aligned with what I wanted, I would get some sort of a closure that, okay, I learned something. So it was like, there was it something came out of it. And I think that led to the beginning of a good healthy relationship with myself, of positive internal dialogue. Now in the outer world it manifested differently, and the moment I started putting myself out there, I realized that I also was encouraging myself to say what I was truly feeling. I could feel it coming out of my gut, and I think that's why they say gutsy courage, right? Because I could, like, sense that rising, and I felt good after saying certain things. But just like very rightly you pointed out, that I realized that was it really creating the kind of outcomes that I wanted? Because the intention there was to create win-win outcomes. It was not to say something just to feel good. While it felt good momentarily, it was not to just feel good. It was to also be mindful of the receiver. And This was one extreme. The other extreme I saw myself going sometimes was where I was, I think, leaning too much towards people pleasing. um, and to me that was compassion. So there were these two extremes that I saw myself leaning towards. And then there was a moment of epiphany where I realized that, okay, you know what, I can use courage to balance compassion, and compassion to balance courage. And that really helped me strike the balance, because otherwise I was leaning too much one side or the other. So if there was a conversation that I had to have, if I mentally primed myself that how can I say this in a way that it is mindful of the receiver, because I think a quality of compassion is also that it's motivated by what the receiver also needs. It's not very one sided. And that really helped me. I won't say that I've mastered it, but at least I know what direction to take and how to balance the two. And likewise on the being compassionate, especially as a coach, there are times when you really want to um, coach in the kindest compassionate way. But another side of being compassionate is that are you letting the person know what they need to hear? Because it's in their interest to to hear something which probably is a blind spot. And as a coach, that was important for me. So then that's when I think courage balances compassion, because that's what's needed at the moment, but it can still be said in a way that is kind. And so to me, they were both. They became sides of the same coin. um, and it's been quite enlightening, because it took me quite some time to see it that way, that they are, they balance each other. How has it been showing up in your coaching conversations?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that courage and compassion are two sides of the same coin, right? Because um, I've been thinking about that recently. We've been having our conversations as well about this topic, and I've been thinking about that. And you're right, because whether that is courage to be able to be true to who you are, or courage to be able to support someone else, right, in their own journey. In all those instances, unless there is an element of self compassion or compassion towards the other person, whatever you might want to achieve out of that, that process really doesn't work out. So for me, I've seen that, come up a lot in coaching, when, especially when, for an individual struggles to set boundaries for themselves, right? Saying, or even sharing, saying, okay, these are things that I'm okay to do, and these are things I'm not okay to do, especially in a professional setting, where they feel like, oh, if I say that, I might be seen in a certain way, or I might not be considered for growth or promotions or something like that. But when they don't set those boundaries, they're not being very compassionate towards themselves, because more often than not, they are stretching beyond what they can actually take up. And I've seen that play out in a few conversations we've had, where it is hard to take that step as well. It is hard to say, you know what, I am going to lay my boundaries and say these are things that I can do and I can't do, or provide alternate options, things like that. And I guess another way this comes up is also in deciding what really you want to do with your life, in a way, or at least for the immediate future. What looks right for you, as opposed to what society tells you to do and things like that, right? Because there's a lot of that also that comes up. And even in those conversations, I've seen that unless that approach is looked at from the lens of courage and compassion, it is very hard to take that step and decide what you want to do with your life or with your career. How about for you, Manisha? You've had a lot of coaching conversations so far, and how have you seen that come up for your clients?
I think, two key ways. One is coming in the way of taking action, and the other is expression. So for action, it is when one wants to really do something, like you articulated that. Okay, how do I summon the courage? Because once you do that, you the outcome may turn out either favorable or not so favorable. So am I ready to handle the not so favorable? And yeah, the and what I have realized is that if one has the one feels equipped to handle the emotional outcome, it's actually more about the emotional outcome, as per what I've experienced through my my own journey and through coaching. Then they have the courage to go for it, and the confidence to go for it. But whenever one feels that, oh, I don't know if I can handle it, like if if I fail, will I be able to handle it? And that's where compassion comes in, because I think courage and compassion also underpin the space one can hold for vulnerability for oneself. And so that's how, in terms of taking action, the other is on similar lines, is expression. Sometimes we want to say how we are feeling, and there is this, but what holds us back is, okay, how will the other person take it? But it's
That's so
brewing
true.
inside.
Yeah.
And it to again, speaking of closure, healthy closure, it's good to express, because otherwise it goes on and on within. It affects the relationship, and so many other things. But what if we just muster the courage to put it out there on the table and just express how we feel? And that also takes courage.
Yes.
uh, and yeah, again, balancing it with compassion. So those are the two ways, action and expression. Because, like, are you telling the person who needs to hear how you're feeling, so that the following, the time together that follows doesn't look like what it's been in the past? Like, can you work things out for better, be it friends, family, colleagues, whatever it may be? So expression there plays an important role. So these two things really stood out for me when I was reflecting on your question on how it shows up in coaching.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought in the element of vulnerability into this, because that is also such an important thing to bear in mind, right? There's so much that goes on in society where we are having these conversations about, should we be vulnerable, should we be showing up as our true selves, because there's so much that sometimes we might not be comfortable about as yet. But I think what the current reality has also pointed out is that you only can be yourself, right? There's nothing to hide behind or nothing to not show about yourself.
Yes,
Being vulnerable really, I think, makes the difference, especially in today's kind of day and age. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's where courage and compassion both are like the crucible, which hold that space to be vulnerable.
exactly.
Uh, yeah,
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for this conversation today, Manisha. As always, I love talking with you, to you,
likewise, likewise.
both. And to everyone who's listening in to our video, please share with us any questions you might have about courage and compassion. I'm not going to say that we are the experts in this field, but we are also practitioners of courage and compassion, and we'd love to share our own experiences. We'd love to hear from you about any stories that you've got in your own personal lives that really kind of tilted that, or helped you to reach this understanding of courage and compassion. Or if there was any insight that you gained from today's conversation, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for watching this video.
Thank you.